have a little chat about focusing on communication with your baby in order to have success with breastfeeding. Are you planning to breastfeed when your baby arrives? Well, whatever happens will happen. It's not an easy thing to manage, but if you prepare well, you have better chances of success. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So, do you know me yet? I'm Roya. I've helped hundreds of families like yours focus on communication with their babies. You can create a strong bond from your baby from within the womb. You can understand their needs and wants and parent with joy and confidence. Your child will grow up multilingual, feel at home in all their countries. They will be able to be close to your friends and family who live back home abroad, and your child will enjoy the opportunities of an international lifestyle. Is that what you're looking for? If so, I'm happy to help. Now, the light's just gone a bit weird. It's raining, which means it's snowing. I live in Switzerland and I'm looking out at mountains, and so I can see that the light is changing a little bit. Big black clouds are rolling in and I can see snow on the hills. It's exciting. Now, topic on hand, breastfeeding, communication. And when we're pregnant, or I remember when I was pregnant, I was really looking forward to breastfeeding. I was like, that's what I want to do. And I knew that it might not be as easy as I hoped. I'd heard that it doesn't always come naturally, and I was a little bit concerned about that. And I have since learned that actually it's absolutely a learned behavior. It's not necessarily something that comes naturally, and we need to work hard at breastfeeding. And new mums need support with this. It's really important to work together with your baby as a team to have a successful experience with breastfeeding. So I've got some tips. I've got 5 tips for you today on this topic. So the first one actually is, it's a learned behavior. And what do I mean by that? So, we're pregnant, it all happens very naturally. Your baby's growing in your belly. You're not really consciously taking control of any of that. Your baby's growing, developing, and then your baby's born and you think, okay, I'm going to feed my baby. And it's going to be the same. It's going to be natural. My body's going to take care of it and it's going to be easy. And I think some people might have an easy experience with breastfeeding, but I think it's very common for it to be a bit of a struggle. Let's be honest. Let's be real. And so it's really nice when you're pregnant for somebody to tell you, hey, breastfeeding is a learned behavior, and if that's what you want to do, just be conscious of that. And so then what can you learn? How can you prepare? Well, you can. There are lactation consultants who run breastfeeding courses or breastfeeding workshops, and that's something that you can do before your baby arrives to learn about how it works. And there are tips and tricks and things that you can learn about positions. Like, you always see a mum holding a baby in their arms. When you think of breastfeeding, you think like this, But there are so many different ways of holding a baby to help them feed. And if you know those ways, then later down the line, when your baby's arrived, you will have the tools you need. If something's not working, then you think, okay, this position isn't comfortable, it's not working for us, we can try something else. And that was my experience too. I was going to share more of my experience after the 5 tips, but I could bring it in here that with my son, I had a fast letdown, and with my son, he found it too much milk. And so one of the better ways, rather than him laying down, was for him to be sort of upright. He was sitting on my lap and upright. And also this helped him because he had some issues with reflux. And reflux babies don't want to be laying down while they're feeding or immediately after they've had a feed, because the milk is coming back up. And so if you can keep them a little bit inclined or sitting while they're feeding, then gravity is helping to keep everything down. And that is much more comfortable for your baby and easier to digest, because if you don't know already, reflux is to do with a valve here in the tube that's going down to the stomach that's not quite developed yet. And so it's not keeping the milk down, it's allowing it to come back up. And that's quite uncomfortable for some babies. And for my son, it was really a big problem. So take the time to find out if there's a lactation consultant or some birth educator near you who is running a workshop or a course. It might just be 2 or 3 hours and teaching you the basics of breastfeeding so you get a really good start. And then the second tip, number 2, is to be aware that you have to work as a team with your baby. So your baby instinctually knows, that they have to look for food, and we're going to look at some of the hunger signals that your baby will do later so that you know when they're hungry. They tell you with their mouth, they're looking for the milk. But your baby is also learning how to feed. So they have the instinct, they know they have to feed, but they have to learn how to do it. And they have to learn how to work together with your body. Your body and your baby are working together in the most marvelous way. It's amazing. Tea time. It's just the most amazing thing. So something that I found incredible about breastfeeding is that your body produces exactly the right amount and the right type of milk for your baby at different stages. And so a lot of mums, in my reading and talking to mums, the first week get really worried that they're not producing enough milk. And this could be for 2 reasons. One is that your baby will lose weight when they're born. The first few days, they lose weight, but that's completely normal and that's nothing to do with your milk. And I'm not sure if every mum realizes that. They're like, oh, my baby's losing weight, and they're worried about it. And it takes time for your baby to regain their birth weight and then start putting on more weight. But that's completely normal. Every baby goes through that. It's not something to worry about, actually, unless later along they're very behind in where they should be. But the first couple of weeks, it's normal that your baby loses weight, and it's normal that it takes time for them to regain their birth weight and then have, gain weight. So yeah, that's important to know. And you can talk to your midwife about this, or whoever follows you after the birth. You can check together your baby's birth weight, but be patient. You don't need to panic when your baby loses weight. That's completely normal. Then the other thing that's really important to know is that in the first days after having your baby, your body is producing colostrum. That's not your full milk yet. And your baby's stomach, it's tiny. The first day, it's like as big as a cherry. It's really tiny. So if your baby doesn't spend a lot of time the first day drinking, or you're like, oh, she didn't drink anything, he didn't drink anything, you don't need to worry about that. That's your baby and your body working together. Your baby only has space for a cherry amount of milk. It's like a couple of ounces. And the colostrum is the perfect food for your baby at that moment. So you don't need to start supplementing with formula or anything like that. And actually, that's a trap that some mums fall into, because they feel like, oh, my baby's losing weight and I'm not producing milk yet. I need to give my baby formula. But actually, that can interfere with your baby and your body communicating together. Because the more your baby suckles on your breast, the more your baby is giving a message to your body, produce more milk. And then your body will do that, and the baby will get the milk that they need. But if we're worrying that if our first thing is like, oh, my baby's losing weight and this isn't milk, there's not enough milk coming, and my baby's sucking a lot and not getting anything, I need to supplement with formula. What happens is when we give the baby the formula, the baby gets used to a lot of milk coming and a full belly, immediately, without having to work for it so much, because breastfeeding is hard work for a baby. That's something that we need to acknowledge. And they get used to that. And then that's the baby. And then the mother's body is not getting the signal from the baby because the baby's not suckling anymore. They're satisfied. The mother's body doesn't get the signal that the baby needs more milk. And so the mother's body thinks, okay, we're producing enough milk, and it doesn't ramp up production. And then you get a vicious cycle. Now, I don't want to say formula's wrong, and I don't want to say that mums who supplement are doing it wrong. That's not what I'm saying, okay? Feed your baby. But I want you to be aware of this cycle. And I think some mums are not aware of that. And it can be a bit of a trap, especially for mums who really would like to breastfeed. They don't understand this is happening. They end up in this vicious cycle. And their baby is satisfied from the formula, and the mama's body is not producing more milk because it's not getting the feedback that there's a hungry baby. And I think that unfortunately is the reason why a lot of mums stop feeding their babies earlier than they would like to. So now you know. Okay, the third tip that I want to share with you today is that resting is super important for both you and your baby, and especially when it comes to breastfeeding. And this is also a communication thing, because breastfeeding regulates you and your baby. It helps you both feel calm. It connects you. Your baby is on your body and your baby is regulated by your heartbeat. So it's like, it's like your baby's still inside you in some ways. It's very symbiotic. So your baby needs to be on your body and needs to have this connection with you to be calm and safe. And you, mama, when you're breastfeeding, also your body is self-regulating. So you are becoming more calm, you're sitting still and you're resting. And actually, especially in the fourth trimester, so the 3 months after you give birth, that time is really delicate and really precious. Excuse me. And in that time, your baby might cluster feed a lot, okay, which is like they just want to be on you constantly, feeding for hours, and you think you're finished and then they want to start again. That's your baby telling your body to produce more milk, but it's also your baby and you learning to stop and rest. Okay? You need to rest in the 4th trimester. And I don't think society is really like aware or accepting of this. I remember being a new mom, and I think the first couple of weeks, the first month, I'm like, I need to rest. I just had a baby. But then you really get sort of like sucked back into the fast pace of life again, and you think you should bounce back. That's what everybody talks about, let's bounce back, and you do all the things. And it's too much. It's too much. So we need to rest. So when our baby wants to breastfeed and we sit down and we breastfeed, our bodies are communicating with each other and our baby is ensuring that we get the rest that we need. And we are looking after our baby by giving them the nutrition that they need, but not just that. It's a bonding experience. They're feeling the heartbeat and you're together with your baby self-regulating. It's just gorgeous. So yeah, mama, if your baby is younger than 3 months old, please just sit, get nap trapped, get breastfeeding trapped, just sit and rest. This is a very small window of time in your life where all you have to do is that, rest and feed your baby and eat enough and drink enough, but let's rest, people. Okay, tip number 4, have the phone number of somebody who's going to help you, somebody who's on your side with the breastfeeding. I read this week, and I was shocked. I'm still shocked about it, actually. I read this week that the UK, England, Britain, where I'm from, has the worst breastfeeding rate in the world. Okay, let's just take a second. The UK has the worst breastfeeding rate in the world. And not just that, 80% of women who breastfeed stop before they want to. That's 8 out of 10 women stop breastfeeding before they want to. Okay? This makes me really upset. These women are not getting the support that they need to keep breastfeeding because it's not really easy. We think it will come naturally. We think it will be easy. We have all these beautiful ideas. We see pictures of mums breastfeeding and being all relaxed. And it's not always going to be that easy. And mum, you need support. And you need a phone number that you can call anytime to ask questions. So I think the best person to have a phone number for is a lactation consultant. Now, I didn't have my babies in the UK. And I don't know what country you're in because I talk to a lot of people in a lot of places. I talk mainly to mums in Europe, so maybe you're somewhere around there. I had my babies in the Netherlands, and it was possible to have a phone number of a lactation consultant. Now, in the Netherlands, the lactation consultants, at the time I had my babies, which is like five plus years ago, they worked sort of mainly privately. You would have to pay for a service of a lactation consultant, but you could have access. There was limited access with your health insurance, depending on what health insurance you had. Or in the Netherlands, there's a beautiful thing. goodness, I must make a video another day about it. They have kraamzorg nurses who are nurses who come to your home every day for a week after you've given birth, and they look after you and your baby. Wonderful. And your kraamzorg service also often has a lactation consultant that you can speak to. Get that phone number. Get that phone number before your baby is born. Okay? And then anytime you have a question, call them. Call them. And with both my babies, I did have to call a couple of times the lactation consultant when I just got stuck. And it wasn't even at the beginning. It was like after 6 months or after nearly a year of breastfeeding, I was having either pain and symptoms that I thought were mastitis, which is really scary. Learn what mastitis is before you embark on your breastfeeding journey. And I had advice from a lactation consultant on how to deal with that. And then there was another time, but I don't remember what it was. But actually, one of the main things she told me was to slow down and rest. But a lot of breastfeeding problems come when we're trying to do too much. Okay, so make sure you have a phone number of somebody. Okay, and it could just be like a really experienced mum who has had several kids or 1 or 2 kids of her own that you can ask questions to. But have a phone number of somebody. Okay, it could be your midwife too. Yeah. And tip number 5, know what the hunger signals are. Okay, my tea's getting cold. Have you got a cup of tea? I hope you made a cup. We can have tea time together. Okay, tip number 5, know your baby's hunger signals. Now, there are some facial expressions and body language, body things that your baby will do that will help you understand that your baby is hungry. And it's really nice to understand that they're hungry, or they're getting hungry, or they're hungry before they're starving and crying desperately for milk. Because once your baby's got to that point, it's very difficult, remember, to work as a team. Once your baby is really hungry and crying desperately, trying to get them on your breast, latching on, it's really hard. You have to calm down your baby before you can feed them. So let's learn some of these signals. So the first one I want to mention to you is rooting. Have you heard of that? So rooting is your baby looking around for milk. They're sort of like got their mouth open, and they're flopping their head around, looking for where the milk is going to come from. That's rooting for milk. Or they could be, you're holding them and they're kind of going, like this, on your body. It can also happen when dad's holding them or when somebody else is holding them and they're like, ooh, I think the baby's hungry. Yeah, you've seen that, right? So that's rooting. Actually, these hunger signals, I just want to point out, if you are not breastfeeding but you're formula feeding, these are the same signals. So look out for them. These are good for everybody. Okay, first one's rooting. Second one is smacking their lips. They go like this, or you might see babies that look like they're kissing. Yeah, and they're like kissing on someone or something. They're not kissing. I know it's cute to think that they're kissing, but they're just hungry. They're hungry. Another one is that their hands are going in their mouth. Okay, their fingers might be going in, their hands are going in. And sometimes you see when a finger goes in, they start the sucking reflex. And then the last one is if they've started crying, how can you tell if it's a hunger cry and not a being tired cry? So hunger cry is really frantic. It's really like desperate, like that. It's very loud and dramatic, and they're going to die. They're starving. Okay, whereas a hungry cry tends to be more lamenting and feeling sorry for themselves. Okay, so there are 5 things that you can look for with your baby. Now, the important thing, was it 5 things? No, it was 4 things. Rooting, smacking lips, hands in mouth, frantic crying. 4 things. It's important that you're looking at your baby and learning what your baby's hunger signals are, because not every baby is the same person. Your baby is an individual and they might have their own facial expressions or things that they do when they're hungry. So if your baby does something that I haven't mentioned, please write it in the comments, because we can all learn from each other and that will help the other mums. All right, so yeah, I wanted to tell you those 5 tips. And then I thought I'd talk a little bit about my experience. So I already mentioned about, breastfeeding is a learned behavior and your baby has to learn that too. So I talked about finding someone who's doing a breastfeeding workshop or course, and I did that. I went to one before my first baby was born, and I remember like squeezing it in like at week 38 or something. Like, I don't know why I hadn't done it before, and then the only one that was available was just before my baby was due. And I went, and I remember going by myself. I think my husband was sick, and then I was like, I don't want to go by myself. And then I thought, no, this is important, so I'm going to go. And it was in Rotterdam, in the Netherlands, and it was maybe like a 20-minute or half an hour drive from my house, and I'm really pregnant, and I just didn't feel up to it. It was the evening, I was tired, but I'm really glad that I went. I learned some really useful things, and the lactation consultant gave us a really nice like folder with printed out things like the main points and some images that I could refer back to. And I had those in the bed with me when my baby arrived. So I was able to like refer to things and look at the pictures again and look at the tips for latching on, which is the baby, getting into the right position and the right mouth position for the baby. All those things are really important. And if you don't know them, you don't know them. You don't know what you don't know. So it's not even really Googleable. You could Google, how to breastfeed, but there's lots of tips that might not come up. So I think one of my favorite things that I remember from that workshop was that, she was like, imagine when you eat a hamburger that you go, ah, with a wide mouth, ah. That's the moment when your baby has a big mouth. That's the moment to put them in position, and then they can get a really nice latch. That was a really fun tip. So look out for that. And my baby arrived, and something else that I had learned was that something that sadly happens when a new baby arrives is that there's lots of interference from well-meaning nurses or midwives, or maybe, I don't know, people around you. The moment that your baby's arrived, we often do, in Europe anyway, we often do skin to skin, right? We know that's important. We want our baby on our chest, naked baby, naked chest here, so that your baby is on you as soon as they're born. And I think the first hour or so is really, really important to have your baby there. But at that moment too, your baby does this thing. It's like a crawl. And your baby, if you just plonk your baby there and leave them, you see that your baby is rooting around, looking for the nipple, and will find their way there by themselves. Okay? It sounds crazy, but your baby does that, and they do it all on their own. And you don't need anybody to come and pick up your baby and put them on you. You don't need that. Your baby will find their own way. And my son did that. And I remember being amazed by it. And that was my experience too with my second baby, with my daughter. And I actually wrote in my birth plan, please do not assist us with breastfeeding unless we ask for it. Because I wanted to see if it was true. I learned this in the breastfeeding course. Leave your baby alone. They will crawl. They will find the breast by themselves. Moments after they've been born. I think this is a little bit crazy, but I want to know. So I specifically said in my birth plan and to the nurses around me, don't help us unless we ask for help with the breastfeeding. And anyway, both babies, they found their way. Incredible, really emotional to watch that happen. They did it all by themselves. So some of it does come naturally, actually. But without loads of people telling you lots of conflicting things or doing it for you or positioning your baby for you. Take a moment just to see what will happen by itself. And then make sure you have the help and support you need even when you need it. And I think you will, because it's beautiful, it is natural, but it's a learned behavior. So you're going to need some support at some point. So what else can I tell you about my experience? Let's see, what did I write down? Oh yeah, another thing that happened. So we had quite a good experience. I've told you already the 2 times that I did need a lactation consultant, so make sure you have that number. Another time I was at the family doctor, at our general practitioner family doctor, and I was asking him something, and it was to do with me or the baby. I don't remember. But then he asked me, are you still breastfeeding? And I was like, yeah. And I think it was around 8 months old, my son. And I was really proud of us that we'd got that far, you know. I didn't have great expectations. I just wanted to do as much as I could. I was aiming for a year, but I didn't know if I could get that far. And the doctor just said, you need to stop now. I was like, okay. And that was not very encouraging. So that can happen to you too, right? Somebody might say, it's time. You don't need to do that anymore. So I don't know. You have to decide if you're going to listen to somebody who says that to you, but somebody at some point will. It might be a medical professional. It might be a grandparent. It might be your sister. It might be a friend. And they're like, why are you still breastfeeding? And I think that's a bit sad. I think the only person who should be deciding is you, together with your baby, because you are a team, a breastfeeding team. And at 8 months, it's true that your baby has already probably been eating some solids. But, you know, you decide, okay? Don't let people decide for you what you're going to do with your baby, okay? I think that's good advice anyway. But anything to do with your baby, you decide, okay? And don't be scared to do things differently, because sometimes doing it different is what's best for you and for your family. So that happened, yeah. And then for both babies, which is weird, I continued breastfeeding with them until they were 14 months old, both of them. And that wasn't planned. That's just sort of like how it went. With my son, it was just time. Well, actually for both babies, maybe it was also to do with me and my body, but I was struggling with energy by that point. It was costing me a lot of energy to produce the milk. And I had been producing the milk for 14 months. You know, everything was great. I had enough milk for my kids. That was not a problem, but I was tired and I was eating a lot to maintain my energy, but also my weight. I was losing weight, and I'm a thin person anyway, so it was a lot, and that was the right time to stop. And with my son, it was something like, I think he would have liked to continue longer, but for me it was too much. So we just sort of started dropping a feed every now and then like stretching them out, and then he was only getting milk at night time, and we did it gradually. And I think that's important too, because it allowed my supply to drop off as well. Breastfeeding is not something you can just say, okay, I've had enough, I'm going to stop now, and stop, because then you will end up full of milk, engorged and in pain. So think about how you're going to stop when you're going to stop. And with my daughter, I don't really remember why. I think she was quite happy to drop them off slowly, the feeds. But I do remember that by the time I finished breastfeeding my daughter, I was eating a hell of a lot of chocolate. Just to keep going. I think I was eating one of these big bar of chocolates every day, like just for me. And you know what? That's okay. I don't know if we talk about that enough as well when it comes to breastfeeding, how much energy and how many calories you need to keep that up. And it can help with losing the baby weight, that's true. But also, you know, you need to eat a lot to maintain you and another person. So don't be afraid to eat if you need to. Yeah, so there you go. I think that's everything I wanted to tell you. So I think I had somebody with me the whole time. Hi, Jessica. So if you have any questions about this, you know where to write in the comments, send me a comment, send me a private message, or just get in touch. You know where to find me. And I hope that you have a wonderful experience with breastfeeding, and I hope you can do it as long as you want to. And I think the key to that is remembering it's a learned behavior. You have to work as a team with your baby and get support when you need it. And if you're ready to do those 3 things, you're going to have a lovely, lovely time. So thank you for having tea with me. I'm going to finish my cup now.